The Canola School on RealAgriculture.com is brought to you by BASF Canada and Invigor Hybrid Canola.
Kara Oostros here with RealAgriculture.com. I am back here today with another Canola School episode, and I have here with me the one, the only Gregory Sekulic with the Canola Council of Canada. How's it going today?
It's awesome, Kara. How about yourself?
It's going great. Now, you're sitting in a canola field. It's November. What are you doing in the canola field?
Trying to get rid of this deathly pallor of some...
Oh my goodness. Anyways, back on track. We are talking today about fertilizer efficiency. What to do, what not to do. Can you tell me a bit about what your message is today?
Yeah, sure. So basically, we want to make sure that a producer is realizing value from every gram of fertilizer that he or she puts into the soil. It doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to my mind to spend hundreds of dollars a ton on products that are subject to losses and put them into rivers and streams and lakes and the atmosphere. Really not a good place to put them. And so we can actually measure both the carbon and greenhouse gas equivalent footprints coming off of a ton of canola. And we've actually, built our best management practices around like maximizing economic profit in canola. Now, actually all crops really. And the good thing about fertilizer efficiency is that basically what we're doing is just taking that to the next level and making sure that all of that money that we're spending gets turned into crop and not into emissions.
So what are some of the things producers can do in order to do this?
Basically, we never want to see fertilizer left on the surface. Let me rephrase that. Unprotected fertilizer left on the surface. Every fertilizer application we make, we want it to be protected somehow, either through a treatment or a coating or with soil. The efficiency of fertilizer applications are and have been for, ever, are best when that fertilizer is covered and sealed by moist soil, multiple inches of moist soil. Putting it in a place where the crop can access it, ideally where weeds can't access it, and where it won't escape into the atmosphere. And so basically, to our eyes, the best way of doing this is basically at the time of application, or at the time of seeding, sorry. That way, we've got fertilizer in the field in tightly controlled bands, ideally in proximity to the canola rows. But definitely, we want to see it. We prefer to see fertilizer, especially nitrogen, banded to make sure that it's protected from the elements and in a concentrated area that weeds can't get to it. So that's probably the first way of maximizing your efficiency, and that is banding at the time of seeding. We've got work on this going back into the 70s. Like one of the early fertilizer and fertility researchers, John Harapiak, started doing work on this even before I was born. And soil physics probably haven't changed much in the intervening 28 years. So we really want those fertilizer bands to be covered. And we really want to basically protect those nitrogen fertilizer applications. So if we're doing fall applications, which can be under ideal circumstances, almost as efficient as, or in some cases as efficient as spring applications, we want to make sure that they're banded below the soil surface, covered by 2 to 3 inches of moist soil at least. And obviously before the soil starts to freeze up and become snowy. If we're talking about fall broadcast applications, that's not necessarily the end of the world, but we definitely want to see it protected. So like a coating or a treatment of some sort to prevent the breakdown of that fertilizer into gases is like the next best thing. And we also want to make sure that these applications are not made to frozen soil or on top of snow. There's a couple of interesting practices that still happen that I really don't understand, and that is applying fertilizer onto snow in fields. And it just I don't understand the mentality there, especially if the ground beneath it is frozen. What we would see is either runoff in the spring or like volatilization in the spring as the water melts before the soil does, or the snow melts, before the soil does, and we would see like pretty drastically increased losses in those cases. The other reason we prefer to see spring applications is because a lot of our nitrogen losses don't necessarily happen over winter or even at the time of application. An unfrozen ground with a very light skiff of snow, with heavy granules that fall through and actually manages to make it through to the ground, may not be as bad as I'm picturing it, or as some of our trial work has demonstrated that it is. But we do see, especially after a heavy snowfall winter or a wet spring, we'll see those fertilizer bands and applications covered with water in the spring. And that's when we'll see another round of nitrogen losses, is actually under saturated soils in spring that are slowly warming before we have a chance to go in and seed them. So that's the benefit then, again, to having that spring at time of seeding application is that those soil conditions are no longer there anymore. And if there are standing water in a field or wetlands that are filled for that 1 in 5 years, we can go around them and prevent those losses from happening when we're seeding at the time.
So obviously this is huge on a environmental perspective, but can you talk a bit about what sort of economic losses you're facing by some of these practices as well?
Well, losses over winter of like in excess of 15% are not at all uncommon with especially with broadcast unprotected applications. Now, like in some seasons, there may be an advantage to spreading in the fall because of pricing. It's traditionally spring purchased fertilizer is more expensive than fertilizer in the fall, which has, I'm quite certain, led to a lot of the fall fertilization practices. But in years when that spread isn't there, and we can pretty reasonably, keep like 10 to 15% of that fertilizer dollar from gassing off or running off, we're definitely money ahead there.
Absolutely. Okay, is there anything else you'd like to add?
Really, I guess if we look at this whole fertility regime from a life cycle perspective, Canadian canola producers are pretty much the best canola producers in the world when it comes to efficiency. Like our greenhouse gas equivalents per ton of canola produced are about the best in the world. We kind of bounce back and forth with Australia for the best, and it kind of depends on how the calculations are made and whether or not soil organic matter increases in soil organic matter as a result of reduced tillage are included in the calculations. Because that is actually like quite a dramatic difference. But we're typically 2 to 3 times more efficient in terms of greenhouse gas emissions than the European Union. And that really is a good thing. It's a couple different reasons for that, primarily being our fertilizer sources are very basic. They tend to be urea and ammonia. They tend not to be the more processed calcium nitrates and ammonium nitrates that require another level of manufacturing and basically keep building up that carbon footprint of that pound of nitrogen. So broadly, we are doing a very good job, but just because we're doing a very good job doesn't mean we can't still be doing things better. Mm-hmm. And anytime that we can pick up the efficiency in a system with fewer passes and fewer losses in that system, we can turn those dollars into increased both crop production and time off spent not fertilizing. So you can spend that hour you spent applying fertilizer, you could have potentially spent that with the kids before they're, off to college and singing Cats in the Cradle like I do.
Awesome. Okay, as per usual, it was a pleasure to talk to you, Gregory, and I look forward to seeing what the 2021 season brings.
Awesome, likewise.